I'm a partner here in Luton. I've been a partner for 4 years, but I've been working as a GP for just over 10 years. My patients in Luton come from a very diverse background. We have many different cultures and languages spoken, and that makes it a really interesting place to work.
I'm a general practitioner working at Lee Vale Medical Practice. We are a medical practice with a patient group of just under 25,000 patients working within a multidisciplinary environment across 3 different sites.
I'm a GP registrar, ST4. I work part-time here and I work part-time with the CCG, and I also do a degree at Cambridge.
I feel that discharge information is probably the only link that occasionally we have between primary care and secondary care. Whether it be from the hospital, from the subspecialities, or whether it be from accident and emergency.
It's a very critical point. The patient's care is ended at that stage in hospital and it's transitioned to the community. And there's loads of players involved, loads of organisations. And so getting that right is very important, and one of the most important tools to getting that right is having a good discharge and a good discharge summary, so people like myself could have all the comprehensive information available to us so that we can then carry on the care.
The patient benefits from a good discharge summary in many ways, I would say. They're able to relay what has happened to them, their journey that they've been through, and the GP who's not been privy to that previously will be able to get a better understanding of what has happened and ultimately what they've been told for the future.
If a discharge summary is done well, then I think it helps a patient to understand what's happened and what's going to happen. When they're in hospital, sometimes they might be quite unwell or confused, or it's all very overwhelming, so they don't always take in the information even if it's been told to them at the time. So I think it's really helpful for them to be able to take that information, and particularly with the list of medications, so they understand what drugs they're supposed to be taking.
I'm a firm believer that all information should be made transparent to the patient, because it's their record, it's their health, and it's a way to empower them to understand their body, to understand themselves and make the right decisions.
The discharge information is crucial to us to be able to continue caring for the patient safely. Some narrative is important, I think, to understand what's happened to the patient. For example, if we've had somebody that's discharged for end-of-life palliative care, those sorts of discharges sometimes are written very well, and that really helps us to understand what's happening with that patient, particularly as we may not have known them previously.
When we receive a discharge summary, if I was to prioritise anything, it would be that column that says actions for the GP. When we are reviewing patients, occasionally they do say that the doctors at the hospital told me to do this, told me to do that, and that information that we can compare, or we can say, I've looked through your discharge summary, this is what's happened and this is what they've advised. It puts us in a better position to manage them as well as managing their expectations. Second most important column would be medications. Medications given and any medications changed. We receive requests for medications from patients saying that they've been asked to stop a certain medication, start a different medication, but without the information for us to do that, there is a high clinical risk attached to it.
It's important that any things like medications, any investigations that we as GPs understand that have taken place, and so that therefore we don't request unnecessary investigations, both for the patient's perspective and our perspective. And secondly, if there's been referrals that have been made, we don't duplicate those referrals. So to be honest, it's paramount that we have this communication tool between secondary care and primary care.
One of the things that is really important to recognise is the importance of following up any tests that are done in the hospital, rather than asking the GP to chase investigations that are done. Sometimes that can be quite unsafe, and a discharge summary might suggest that a GP repeats a blood test in 5 days' time. The difficulty with that is if we haven't received the discharge summary within that 5 days, we may receive it after that time, by which time potentially that patient is missing an opportunity to have their medication safely reviewed.
In the environment that we work, time and access is something that is generally quite precious, I would say. If we can have pertinent, concise information focusing on what's been done and what needs to be done, that will benefit us personally as general practitioners as well as general practice as a whole. Having been a junior doctor myself only less than a year ago, I feel like there are many challenges when it comes to completing a good quality, safe discharge summary. Time restraints I found was probably the biggest issue. It's difficult to rush through some of the information and risk missing it out, particularly for your colleagues who are going to be quite reliant on that information. Secondly, it's the accumulation of the information. At times, it would take hours on end because trying to filter through a patient's notes to get the complete story from different clinicians, different opinions, as well as method of recording the information is quite tough.
It was an interesting transition that happened for myself personally, from being a junior doctor at the hospital compared to being a primary care physician. And not having worked in primary care except for being a medical student, I didn't realise how vital it was. It was a kind of maybe a light bulb moment, thinking that maybe I should have done my discharge summaries a little bit more comprehensive and mentioned certain things like drugs, medications. If the consultant has changed something on the ward, maybe me as a junior doctor hadn't written any of that on the notes. If the notes haven't got anything written on the medications, then you won't mention that in the discharge summary. So yeah, my whole perspective really changed when I came to primary care. It was something that I wish I'd known before and done.
I think the challenges for junior doctors are huge. I can understand it's very difficult to focus on what may seem a less important job to fill in a discharge summary. And also I think I'm aware that sometimes it might be completed by a doctor that hasn't met that patient, so there might be filling in a discharge summary based on what's in the notes. So that's quite difficult for them to be able to find the relevant information and know what's important.
What I would hope to see in the future is a collaboration, so almost like a digital platform for all the different organisations, from primary healthcare to mental health trusts to cancer specialist units, to have a design where we can have this interface and even ourselves see notes live, exactly what's gone on in the hospital. I think that would be really good for everybody involved.